When you think about a disaster, a massive hurricane, a flood, an earthquake, what's the first thing that pops into your head? For most of us, it's the aftermath, right? The rescue crews, the cleanup, all the rebuilding. But what if that's exactly the wrong way to think about it? What if by always focusing on the cleanup, we're actually just investing in failure? Start with a number, $330 billion. According to the data, that's the average cost of climate-related disasters every single year. This isn't some one-off bill. It's a massive, recurring, and frankly growing dent in our global economy. It is a staggering price to pay over and over again. And that really brings us to the big question we're tackling here. Are these catastrophes just getting more frequent and more powerful all on their own? Or is there something fundamentally broken about how we get ready for them? Is the problem just nature, or is it us? To figure that out, we need to talk about a huge shift in thinking that's happening right now. It's all about moving from being reactive, just showing up with mops and buckets, to being proactive. And this much smarter approach has a name: disaster risk reduction. So what exactly is disaster risk reduction, or DRR for short? Well, here's the official UN definition. And it's not just about building a bigger seawall, it's a whole strategy. It's about preventing new risks from ever showing up, shrinking the ones we already live with, and getting a handle on whatever's left. The whole goal is to make our communities stronger and safer before a disaster even has a chance to hit. This chart really lays it out perfectly. On the left, you've got the old way, disaster response. Everything happens after the disaster. It's all rescue, aid, recovery. But on the right, you've got DRR. The focus is entirely on what we do before. See, the goal isn't just to clean up the damage anymore. It's to make sure there's way less damage to clean up in the first place. It's basically the difference between constantly mopping a wet floor and just fixing the leaky pipe. Okay, so how do we actually reduce risk? Well, first, you got to understand what risk is even made of. And it turns out there's a surprisingly simple but really powerful formula that breaks it all down for us. And here it is, the risk equation. What this tells us is that a disaster isn't just random bad luck. No, it's a product of three specific ingredients: a hazard, our vulnerability, and our exposure. So let's quickly break down each piece. First up, you've got the hazard. Pretty straightforward. This is the natural event itself. The hurricanes spinning out in the ocean, the tectonic plates shifting under our feet. This is the part of the equation that, honestly, we have the least control over. We can't just tell an earthquake not to happen. Next up is vulnerability. Now, this is about the weaknesses that already exist in our communities. Think about it. Buildings that aren't built to code and can't handle high winds. Or maybe a town that doesn't have a good early warning system. It's all about how easily we can be harmed when that hazard actually arrives. And the final piece of the puzzle is exposure. This one's simple. Who or what is actually in harm's way? You see, a Category 5 hurricane that stays way out in the middle of the ocean isn't a disaster. It only becomes one when it makes landfall over a crowded city with millions of people, homes, and critical infrastructure sitting right in its path. So here is the absolute key to everything. While we can't stop the hazard, the storm, or the earthquake, we have tremendous control over the other two parts. We can lower our vulnerability by building stronger homes and having better plans, and we can reduce our exposure with smarter choices about where we build our cities. And that is where disaster risk reduction really focuses its power. Okay, so this isn't just some neat theory. It's actually being put into practice all over the world, thanks to a coordinated global plan called the Sendai Framework. And the world is seriously catching on. When this framework was adopted back in 2015, only about 55 countries had a national DRR strategy. But as of 2022, that number jumped to 123. That is a huge leap, and it shows a real global commitment to getting ahead of disasters. The framework basically gives the world a 4-step to-do list. Step 1, understand the risk, using that equation we just talked about. Step 2, strengthen the governments and systems to manage that risk. Step 3, actually put your money where your mouth is and invest in reduction. And finally, step 4, improve preparedness so that if something does happen, the response is as good as it can be. It's pretty much a shared playbook for building a safer planet. But here is where the story takes a sharp and, to be honest, a completely illogical turn. Even though we know that prevention is the smarter way to go, where we spend our money tells a very, very different story. Welcome to the billion-dollar paradox. Just look at this chart. It's absolutely staggering. Of all the international money that goes toward disasters,
A whopping 90% is spent after the fact, on response and recovery. That leaves a tiny 10% for prevention. We are spending almost all our money on the cleanup crew, and practically nothing on the engineers who could stop the building from collapsing in the first place.
And it gets even more precise. If you narrow it down to just international development aid, a shockingly small 0.5% goes toward proactive, pre-disaster work. Not 10%, not even 1%, 0.5. There is a massive canyon between what we know works and where we actually put our cash. And here's the statistic that makes this whole situation completely irrational. Study after study shows the same thing. Every single dollar you spend on risk reduction before a disaster saves somewhere between $5 and $10 in losses later on. I mean, it is one of the best returns on investment you could possibly imagine. It's smarter, it's cheaper, and it saves lives. Which brings us right back to where we started, with this one critical question. We have the formula, we have the global plan, we have proof that prevention isn't just more effective, but it's way, way more economical. So why are our budgets and our policies still pouring money into failure? That's the challenge we all need to be thinking about.